Well, thank you for being here, for making the time.
Thank you for having me. Really
What?
appreciate it.
You have a PhD in computer science focused on machine learning. You teach at Stanford and you are at the helm of Matroid.
Yes. Yep.
But before we delve into that, I would like to know a bit about your earlier challenges, like in life. Where were you born and what obstacles did you have to deal with growing up?
So I was born in Ahvaz. So when I was born, apparently there were so in the war zone with Iran and Iraq. Apparently there were bombs flying overhead, and I don't remember any of it because the war ended when I was 2 years old. But my mom has stories of the bombs would wake me up as a baby. Oh. And apparently several of our neighbors' houses were destroyed. So I'm glad that my parents got me out of that around when I was 6 years old. We immigrated to England. So I grew up in London, England. I did 1 year of, and then we immigrated to Canada because England wasn't so good for immigration at the time. It was hard to become a permanent resident. Canada was more welcoming, so we went there. I did undergrad there, grad school in America. At that point, I was no longer with my parents, basically. So after college, I moved out, and then so I immigrated to America by myself and got initial jobs during undergrad at Google. And that started my machine learning journey. So I've just been focused on machine learning since I was 18, and now I'm 38. So just 20 years straight. I've been doing machine learning longer than I've done anything else at all.
And you were also yourself a learning machine, traversing through all these different cultures.
A learning machine, mostly learning, machine learning. Yeah.
You were educated in England, in Canada, and finally in the US at Stanford. And you're a citizen of Iran, US, and Canada. Is that correct?
I'm definitely a citizen of Iran. Definitely a citizen of USA and Canada. I don't know if I'm still a citizen of Iran. It's
We accept you as an honorary citizen.
Yes, I'm definitely hanging out and very Persian, yeah.
What do you say was the benefit of being immersed at these three different cultures and environments while you were growing up and while you were being educated? Flexibility, hardship?
So being an immigrant, everyone knows the difficulty of changing cultures and changing friend styles. People have different styles when they even interact. And that was very hard. I changed schools. So from, when you're in high school and middle school and undergrad and primary school, you're supposed to have 3 schools because there's 3 stages.
Yeah.
And it's 12 years of school. I had 13 schools in those 12 years. So it averages more than 1 school per year. So and that's sort of similar to the immigrant experience. If you have several countries that you have to immigrate to, you have to redo your life, redo your friendships, redo your everything, right? Typically, you have to even redo your apartment after you move cities. So that's probably the biggest constant in my life is constant change until I moved to the Bay Area. I've been here now for 14 years. And it's the only place I've lived in longer than 8 years. So
this is where home is for you now.
Unclear, because I feel like home is Toronto.
Say yes.
Sure. I love the Bay Area. I mean, obviously, I love it so much that I stayed the most.
But you made the point that I was trying to drive at. I think part of your personality and character is formed tolerating all those hardships. 13 schools in 12 years, not being able to, have a constancy over there, makes you adaptable to changes. And that shows in your personality.
And it's a blessing, I think. It's hardship that is a blessing. There are some hardships that are good for you. This is definitely one of them. It's like running a marathon or something. Like it's hard, but it's actually really good for you.
Yes. I didn't ask you earlier. Why did you go into computer science? What Can you remember, was it because you played games? What made you attracted to computers?
So that's such a hard question to answer because as long as I have memories, they were cool. So I don't, and you know, when you're a kid, you don't really know why things are cool. They're just cool.
Yeah. And you coded early?
Not that early, like 16. A lot of my friends, I didn't have access to a computer until 16. So computers were cool until I was, I don't know, 5, 6 years old, but I never had access to one until I was 15, 16, and then I started coding.
One that you could code.
Yeah, and I coded it to try and do well at a game called Counter-Strike. I don't know if anyone played Counter-Strike, but it was one of the first open source games. Like Half-Life game engine became open source, and then because it was open source, there was a lot of cheating. People would build aim bots that would automatically aim at your enemies' heads, and then you had no hope because anyone using a mouse versus an immediate aimbot would have no choice. So then I built a detector for that. So you would detect fast movements of the mouse. If anyone's mouse was like moving faster than a human could do it, I would tell the server owner, and then be like, look, this guy, like human reflexes are like, you know, you're not going to be faster than 50 milliseconds to see a person and then move your mouse over them in the game. But if you're using an aimbot, you do it in like 10 milliseconds. So it's like very obvious. And you do it in a straight line most of the time. So you can see that if you're watching. And then there was this interesting evolution of the aimbots. Anyway, so I learned C++ from that.
Okay. That motivated you to do that.
Yeah.
I think part of your path in life, you mentioned online, it was influenced by Princeton University's ModeNet Challenge?
ModelNet.
ModelNet Challenge. Tell us about that. How did your success in that challenge affect your life? What was it about?
So there is this, many of you know about ImageNet, right? I bet if I ask, how many people know about ImageNet? Put your hand up if you know about ImageNet. Oh, not that many. Weird. Okay, so ImageNet is a competition out of Stanford that made deep learning popular. It was the reason that deep learning came onto the scene. It was a data set of millions of images, and you had one of 1,000 classes that these images could be, and then you had to classify images, and then that competition is what Jeff Hinton won, along with Ilya Sutskever and Alex of AlexNet fame. That competition, they won that, they did well, and then deep learning became legitimate. And then, because at the time I was a Stanford PhD student, I wasn't allowed to compete in ImageNet. So then when Princeton put out a similar competition, which is instead of classifying images, you classify 3D objects. So you're given a 3D object, like a CAD model, but in voxels, and then you have to decide what it is. A few thousand classes. So we did that. We did a really good job in that after I started Matroid. So I had started Matroid. I had some funding. I had students. So I figured, hey, let's attack this. And we did very well on it. I wouldn't say it was like as pivotal of a moment or even close to it as ImageNet was for, say, Jeff, because deep learning was already very clear, and we used deep learning to win it. So it was just like a really useful thing to make Matroid a little bit more legitimate. Matroid was a young, fledgling company. We're now 8 years old. At the time that we did it, we were 7 years old. People were like, why should we care about you? And at the time, this was nice. But now, no one even knows what it is, right? Like ImageNet, people still know what it is. So it was one competition out of many that we did well on, that I'm proud of. But its name might make you think it's like really pivotal. But I think it was at the time useful, but probably no longer. Yeah.
Was your glaucoma detection project motivated by the same thing, or was there a personal story behind that one, or was it just?
Oh yeah, so that's a funny story. I had similar to this. Someone invited me to come give a talk in Hong Kong. It happened to be a professor in the Stanford School of Medicine. So I went to Hong Kong, met this professor there. We hadn't met we thought we hadn't met at Stanford. I went over there. gave the talk, and then in dinner in Hong Kong, he's like, yeah, I screen patients for glaucoma, and I say, oh, I am a glaucoma suspect. I don't have glaucoma, but I have to get checked for it on occasion. I go to Stanford Hospital to get checked, and he's like, oh, I see the patients there. So it turns out that he's my doctor, and the only reason that I didn't know, and he sees hundreds of patients, right? So if you ever talk to a doctor, like many doctors don't know their patients. Especially the specialized doctors, where you just talk to the doctor for an hour, and that's it. That's your whole relationship with this doctor. Once every 2 years you see the doctor. They're not going to remember. So he didn't know me. I didn't know him because whenever I meet with him, I have my contact lenses out, and they put all kinds of stuff in your eyes you can't see. So I've seen this guy. I've hung out with him, but I never seen him before. And in Hong Kong, I didn't know that he was my doctor either. And the only reason we figured it out is I went back and I looked in my emails, and I was like, oh yeah, Robert Chang. I saw you like 5 years before this talk. So my own doctor had invited me to come give a talk on computer vision. So then we became friends. We started a project to detect glaucoma automatically using computer vision. Some poetic justice to that, using the computer's vision to look at human vision to make human vision better.
And did you use some of the results that with the ImageNet that you had developed for doing glaucoma, or
yeah, absolutely, yeah, ModelNet, yeah, yeah. So we had some 3D scans. OCT scans are three-dimensional. Yeah, it's kind of cool. OCT is amazing. They basically shoot lasers into the back of your eye, and they get several cell layers deep imaging of the back of the eye, which is wild. But it does mean that you have a 3D image of the back of the eye, which then you need to diagnose for things, and you would use a three-dimensional deep learning model, which is it's exactly what we used. Yeah.
Let me ask you about machine learning challenges and opportunities or promises. In your field, this is your field of expertise. What do you see the most exciting developments in the field of machine learning and machine vision? Are there any particular applications in this area that you believe will revolutionize our daily lives?
Yes. So I'm really, really looking forward to, and I think it will happen very soon, the fully automated factory. So right now we're able to sense almost anything about a manufacturing process, but we're pretty bad at actuating differences. So robotics basically has a longer way to go than sensing does. Sensing recently has undergone, in the past, when I say recently, I mean in the past 7-8 years, has become really, really good. We can sense almost anything and see almost anything that the human eye can see, and
even better, because
and
you can
somewhat comprehend it now with LLMs. But the actuating the world and changing things about the world is still far away. But I am seeing now more rapid progress than I've ever seen. So I reckon that'll happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And then we'll get to a point where we have automated factories. Automated factories mean that the cost of something is almost like the cost of the raw materials and the electricity to build it. So right now, we're sensing all kinds of new things in factories at Matroid that get me really excited, and I'm seeing the gradient of how that's becoming more and more automated. And that, to me, is just super exciting. So the ability to have these automated factories just feels like it'll sort of explode humanity. Like so many things will become
So automated
easy.
manufacturing is one. What are the other areas in Matroid that you're working on or targeting that relates to daily life? I mean, yes, it's nice for me to get a product that is made cheaper, but in my daily life, when I wake up in the morning until I go to bed, how would machine vision improvement or advances change my life?
So to be honest, Matroid is we're completely a B2B company. So we have never sold a consumer anything.
I'm not the customer. Okay.
Yeah. So almost everything that you hear about, though. So let me put it this way. So we inspect spaceships that go into All the spaceships, all like several that have gone to the moon have been inspected by Matroid. So hopefully one day we're riding on those spaceships and going up. Many of the cars that you drive have been inspected by Matroid. But we are 100, we're 100% a tool in the factory. So the things that the factory make touches people's lives, and I can see them, and I get super excited by seeing them.
You're the Dolby of manufacturing.
In many ways, yes. Except Dolby has more of a consumer presence than us, I think, because at least that little logo, the Dolby logo on, my headphones, and I know at Vision, Atmos, and things like that. So I think Dolby has more of a consumer presence than we do, actually.
Well, I expect so. They have been around a lot longer.
Sure, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe we should do that. We should start asking, like, if we give our factory customers a discount if they put Matroid logos on their stuff.
There's an idea.
That'd be fun.
I'll get a cut of that. As a professor at Stanford, how do you see the integration of AI and machine learning and machine vision changing the landscape of education? What are some innovative ways AI can be used to enhance teaching and learning experiences?
Interesting. So the funny thing is, I recently went the other way on this. So I have been teaching for 11 years now. And during COVID, I was forced to take all my classes online. Everything was recorded video, interactive stuff. And I was like, great. So technology embraced. But then the classes suffered greatly. The students weren't learning as much. They weren't as happy. And then I just finished teaching, and I undid 5 years of adding technology to my class. So I did lectures. Not only did I do lectures, I didn't use slides. I actually used the blackboard, whiteboard, and wrote down stuff. And that forced me to slow down sufficiently well that I had to explain everything as I'm writing. So as I'm writing, I have to explain everything. So there's no room for not being clear because I have to explain it to myself as I'm writing it. So in some sense, that really helped, which is strange. And so I am not like one of these guys that will tell you MOOCs are the best thing ever and you should learn everything online. Actually, I have beginning to realize that if you watch someone else learn something, that's actually the best way to learn it. Like watching someone learn how to do something is an incredible learning device and probably one of the most powerful learning devices. Yes, you can learn from someone who already knows a thing, but actually watching your classmate suffer over an assignment and have epiphanies while you're working with them is, I think, more of a learning tool than, I don't know, whatever an LLM can do at the moment. Maybe we can get LLMs to show you those steps, then we can, and then that'll help. But honestly, I've gone like make education great again path. I've gone back in time.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's sharing the aha moment between the teacher and the student that cannot be perhaps yet replicated by AI.
Yeah, and also between students. So the aha moments that the students see together,
Learning teams. Now I want to seek your advice for the audience over here. Given the rapid advancement in AI and computer vision, what key advice would you offer the entrepreneurs who want to stay ahead of the curve and successfully navigate the ever-changing landscape of these technologies? What should they focus on to innovate and thrive in this dynamic field? What do you suggest for them? They're all ears.
Probably the biggest thing is assume that anything you write in code will become obsolete. Yeah, that's probably the right thing. So anything that you write in code that you think is going to be super, that has any kind of interest. Like if it has value, if you wrote something and the value is entirely in the code, not in the, say, data or not in some IP or not in some connections or not in some network that results from that code, but just the code itself, you should assume that will become worthless because of open source. And that has worked really well for me. And I think it's just true because there's a lot of incentive for a lot of different people to make code worthless. That's what open source does. It's fun to code. There are actually lots of people who find it fun, like a 15-year-old building an aimbot detector. Yeah. That was just code, and so open source will make almost everything
transparent.
Yeah, worthless. It will make almost everything worthless. And I'm not saying AI will make everything worthless. It's not going to be because some magical AI super being is going to do it. It's just open source. Other humans will do it. And so what you should build is something else that is valuable. So you should build a familiarity with your user interface. You should build a network of users. Somehow they interact with each other. You should build some flywheel that involves interactions of humans with your product, and the code is merely the thing that enables that. And then you'll have some staying power. You'll have the ability to have a company, and companies need decades to become big. So, and your code is only valuable for like a year or 2 or 3, and then it's worthless. So you got to build something else, and you can use these 1 or 2 or 3 year spurts of code that you write to build one of these networks in advance of other people. So never assume that your code is worth anything, basically. Okay. You're always in service of some other network that you're building, and if you're not doing that, you're probably doing something wrong.
Thank you for that. And for my last question, before I open it to the questions in the audience, if you had a crystal ball powered by the latest AI technology, what would it predict for the year 2030? And if it starts giving stock tips, should we trust it?
If it starts getting stock tips?
Yeah.
No, definitely don't trust it if it starts giving stock tips. I would say the biggest there's like a worry that perhaps there'll be less of a need, say, for programmers or coders because AI is going to write all the code. So I would bet that in the year 2030, so just 6 years from now, there'll be way more software engineers than there are now. So we had a similar event at Matroid, and someone was like, I think there'll be no need for software engineers anymore in 5 years. So I'm like taking the hard opposite side of that. Despite all these code generators, I think we're going to have, say, probably 5 to 10x more software engineers in the world in 6 years. We're still not going to have self-driving cars, unfortunately, in 6 years.
We will not.
We will not. No. So this is, again, another contrarian point of view that I have. I'm sorry. I wish we did. I wish I could say it's the other way. But we're not going to have, despite all the efforts, that like, there are some still very, very, very serious big breakthroughs that are needed. Maybe they'll happen. I hope they happen. I don't think they'll happen in 6 years. I think they'll happen in 10 or more. Okay. Yeah. I guess, one side or the other. And then the factories will become more and more automated in a dramatic way. That is happening today. And
things become cheaper.
That's for sure, yeah.
And all the factory workers will become programmers because there are a lot of them.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. There's going to be more software engineers. So engineering and software engineering will become more and more like woodworking and carpentry and welding. So you start picking up sub-skills of it in high school.
We will see. Well,
and that's why your code is worthless, because there's going to be hundreds of millions of more software engineers. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you very much for all your insights.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
We have time for a few questions if you raise your hand. The lady over here. You're next. And we have Hossein in the back, yes.
Hi, thank you for the great talk. I'm here. My name is Mahvash from Amgen. I wanted to ask about like the logic behind this, like saying, okay, we will have like 5 times, 10 times more software engineers. Thank you.
It's just that the value that machine learning and software creates, there's no end in sight to it. Just having this new generation of generative AI engineers, machine learning engineers, I see so, like every single industry is going to be rewritten because of our advances in machine learning and software engineering, and that it's nowhere near happening. It really is like the new writing. Like being able to use a computer is as powerful as being able to write. So 2,000 years ago, whatever it was in Babylon, Iran, whatever, we learned to write, and we're still writing. It's going to be like that. Like we're going to be using computers for as long as humans exist.
The gentleman in the back.
Hi, Reza Jan. Thank you very much for the talk.
Thank you.
My name is Seper. I'm a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. Used to be at Azure, Microsoft Azure. We use Databricks a lot.
Nice.
I know you're one of the founders. I just didn't. I was eager to you tell me the story of. For those people who don't, probably most of people knows about Databricks, but it's data analytics software, and it's used in Azure and AWS. It's big, and you're one of the founders.
So I'm on the founding team, not exactly a founder, but founding team. So I met. So the creator of Spark and I were on the same programming team at Waterloo when we were 18. So that's how I got into Google. So we were on the same programming team. We both went to Google for internships, and that was our first time in Silicon Valley in 2005-ish. And so we met there, and then eventually he went, Matej Zaharia, went to Berkeley for a PhD, I went to Stanford for a PhD, and before he started Databricks, we were working on Spark and things related to it. And then he started Databricks, and I immediately started working with him on it. And and now it's I still help Databricks. I'm still actively, my contract is active. I'm still helping them. Like I'm having dinner with Matej next week. This is a $50 billion company now. It's kind of amazing, and at the helm of that is another awesome Iranian, Ali. So maybe we should try and get him here one day. He'll be excellent as well. I mean, it's just an excellent company, and highly recommend you try it if you have more than I don't know. Nowadays it's probably like 50 terabytes of data to deal with. You should be using Databricks.
Hossein in the back.
Hi, my name is Hossein. I'm founding team member at a robotics company called Foundation.
Hossein, can you stand up so people see
I don't quite see you. There you are, hidden.
I'm Hossein. I'm a founding team member at a robotics company called Foundation. We are building humanoid robots. I have a question. Where do you think humanoid robots are going to be a thing? And then from now until the actuation that you talked about, that's going to take place. How much of that do you think is traditional control versus AI?
I think almost none of it will be traditional control. So I fly planes as a hobby, and I built a plane, and I totally replaced. And PID controllers are the bread and butter of traditional control. If you don't use PID controllers at all, and you like machine learning PID control, I would say at that point you've thrown away traditional control. And I built my plane with an autopilot where I completely learned the control algorithm versus use PID, and it did so much better in almost every way. Like I have it can hover, and I put a bunch of fans around it, and the fans are turning on and off randomly to create turbulence, and then it just hovers like rock steady because of its good PID control, because of its good machine learned control versus PID control. And that just shows itself everywhere in robotics. Everywhere you have an interaction with a surface, everywhere you have slightly nonlinear forces, PID control and traditional control goes out the window. And machine learning does really well. And so I think basically in the same way that computer vision was just completely destroyed and replaced with machine learning, I think control needs to be completely destroyed and replaced with machine learning. And so that's where the advances will come from with regard to finally, and that's where, basically it'll start having us have well actuated joints and limbs, but then the planning phase is the marrying of that with sensing. That is almost certainly going to be also machine learning heavy, but that's a little bit further. Like, I'm a little bit less sure what will take over there. There needs to be a breakthrough, and I'm not like I can't say, oh, that's for sure going to be pure deep learning. There might be just some model that we don't know about. That's about as much as I know. So, it's very, very hard to really know these things. Happy to have a deeper conversation with you on it. You probably know a lot more about it than I do.
Well, you have a question? No. The last question goes to the gentleman over here who is getting prepared. John over here, up front.
I don't see.
Oh, right here, up front. Yes.
Hi, hello. Thank you very much for the great conversation. So my question is to the
What is your name and what is your affiliation?
Oh yeah, my name is Ralph. I have a startup company in robotics. So my question is the follow-up to that question. So there's a major question in robotics. So many companies are trying to build a general purpose humanoid robots, and other companies are trying to build a specific task-oriented robot. So what's your opinion? Where's the market with those products? And what advice you could give someone just building a company, which field is better? And if it's, for example, general purpose humanoid robot being very popular at this moment, Figure recently raised $600 million with $1 billion valuation. So what is their vision by building a general purpose humanoid robots, and how far we are close, or how far we are close, or what is your opinions about that? Thank you.
So the reason folks are building humanoid robots is because we want to use them in human situations. We want them to be able to easily open a door, but then also go and torque some bolts, but then also go and pick up something. So basically, the sequences of tasks that seem to be most economically valuable are those that humans seem to do. So people are trying to build a humanoid robot in order to, it's because of the economic value that they're trying to build a humanoid robot, because it's the most flexibility in the real world, because we built the real world for humans. Obviously, robots have existed forever. Specialized robots doing specialized things have existed forever. Because of this flurry of activity on the software side in control and in vision and in machine learning that has enabled a large amount of progress in other fields like self-driving cars, people are now hopeful that we can start working towards the hardware and the software in conjunction for humanoid robots. I'm of the opinion that the software side of that is still too soon. So why? I think it's a bit too soon to actually start building humanoid robots unless you have almost as big of a bet on the software side. So if you're a company that is trying to do such a thing, and let's say you raise $100 million, you better use 50 of it for the software almost entirely. Probably more of it, actually. So you really have two companies and two big bets there that you can build something that is actuated almost like a human, and then as much money, if not more, into the software side of things. And being a software guy and understanding the software challenges, I'm more inclined to say just put all the money in software, and then the hardware will come about when the software is closer to maturity. But of course, that's kind of a weak statement, because if you're also good at hardware, you could do both. And if you're really ambitious, you'll do well at both, and you'll be in a situation where now you have both a software moat and a hardware, maybe not a moat, but an advantage, a lead. So that's the reason that Optimus exists at Tesla. And if, from my point of view, the software problem is harder, and it isn't solved at all. Because if you have a human and human software, so if you basically had an AI level software at the helm of a intuitive surgical robot or a robot, a car or whatever, you would be able to solve that problem. And yet we can't solve those problems yet. So it feels premature to go ahead and assume that we're going to solve everything that a human can do and build the hardware of a human before we even have simpler robots doing their tasks correctly. Simpler robots being self-driving cars and other simple robots, like even a pet. So I'm just thinking that it's premature, this investment into humanoid robots. And I think slowly most of their funding will go into the software side of things, trying to do the software correctly. And I think that's healthy. And I hope that that spurs a large amount of research, and we'll get to a point where then we have the software solved, and then we can start working on the hardware. That's my guess as to what will happen. And so I'm really excited by it. It means that we're going to have a large amount of software investment into robotics. It's awesome. Yeah. But I don't know how to make money off of it, to be clear, because it seems like a very hard problem right now.
If you have more questions, Reza would be available after the session. And now, on behalf of the AmidiGroup, Plug and Play, Persian Tech Network, and the Iranian community, I would like to thank you for making the time to come over.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's an awesome, awesome group. Thank you so much.